Welcome back on Bambalyor. Please subscribe, like, share, and also comment to get more videos. If you're new here on this channel, you will get to know more about your favorite famous people of around the world. So this video is about Adolf Hitler. The leader of Germany's Nazi party was one of the most powerful and notorious dictators of the 20th century. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889 in Brno after his father Alois retired as a state customs official. Young Adolf spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria. Not wanting to follow in his father's footsteps as a civil servant, he began struggling in secondary school and eventually dropped out. Alois died in 1903 and Adolf pursued his dream of being an artist, though he was rejected from Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. After his mother Clara died in 1908, Hitler moved to Vienna, where he pieced together a living painting scenery and monuments and selling the images. Lonely, isolated, and voracious reader, Hitler became interested in politics during his years in Vienna. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, in the German state of Bavaria, when World War I broke out the following summer. He successfully petitioned the Bavarian king to be allowed to volunteer in a reserve infantry regiment. Deployed in October 1914 to Belgium, Hitler served throughout the Great War and won 2 decorations for bravery, including the rare Iron Cross First Class. Hitler came to believe the country's devastating defeat could be attributed not to the Allies but to insufficiently patriotic traitors at home. After Hitler returned to Munich in late 1918, he joined the small German Workers' Party, which aimed to unite the interests of the working class with a strong German nationalism. His skilled oratory and charismatic energy helped propel him in the party's ranks, and in 1920 he left the army and took charge of its propaganda efforts. In one of Hitler's strokes of propaganda genius, the newly renamed National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, adopted a version of the swastika, an ancient sacred symbol of Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, as its emblem, printed in a white circle on a red background. By the end of 1921, Hitler led the growing Nazi Party, capitalizing on widespread discontent with the Weimar Republic and the punishing terms of the Versailles Treaty. Many dissatisfied former army officers in Munich would join the Nazis, notably Ernest, who recruited the strong arm squads known as the SA, which Hitler used to protect party meetings and attack opponents. On the evening of November 8, 1923, members of the SA and others forced their way into a large beer hall where another right-wing leader was addressing the crowd. Wielding a revolver, Hitler proclaimed the beginning of a national revolution and led marches to the center of Munich, where they got into a gun battle with police. Hitler fled quickly, but he and other rebel leaders were later arrested. Even though it failed spectacularly, the beer hall putsch established Hitler as a national figure and, in the eyes of many, a hero of right-wing nationalism. Tried for treason, Hitler was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but would serve only 9 months in the relative comfort of Landsberg Castle. During this period, he began to dedicate the book that would become My Struggle, the first volume of which was published in 1925. In it, Hitler expanded on nationalistic and anti-Semitic views he had begun to develop in Vienna in his early 20s, and laid out plans for the German and the world he sought to create when he came to power. It sold modestly at first, but with Hitler's rise to become Germany's best-selling book after the Bible by 1940, it had sold some 6 million copies there. Obsessed with race and the idea of ethnic purity, Hitler saw a natural order that placed the so-called Aryan race at the top, For him, the utility of the Volk, the German people would find its truest incarnation not in democratic or parliamentary government, but in one supreme leader. My struggle also addressed the need of living space. In order to fulfill its destiny, Germany should take over lands to the east that were now occupied by inferior Slavic peoples, including Austria, the Sudetenland, Poland, and Russia. By the time Hitler left prison, economic recovery had restored some popular support for the Weimar Republic, and support for right-wing causes like Nazism appeared to be waning. Over the next few years, Hitler laid low and worked on reorganizing and reshaping the Nazi Party. He established the Hitler Youth to organize youngsters and created the Schutzstaffel SS as a more reliable alternative to the SA. Members of the SS wore black uniforms and swore a personal oath of loyalty to Hitler. In 1932, Hitler ran against the war hero Paul von Hindenburg for president and received 36.8% of the vote. With the government in chaos, three successive chancellors failed to maintain control, and in late January 1933, Hindenburg named the 43-year-old Hitler as chancellor, capping the stunning rise of an unlikely leader. January 30, 1933 marked the birth of the Third Reich, or the Nazi called it the 1,000-year Reich, after Hitler's boast that it would endure for a millennium. In 1932, Hitler was unable to grab absolute power in Germany, largely due to divisions and inaction among the majority who opposed Nazism. After a devastating fire at Germany's Parliament building, the Reichstag in February 1933, possibly the work of Dutch communists, though later evidence suggested Nazis set the fire themselves. Hitler had an excuse to step up the political oppression and violence against his opponents. On March 23, the Reichstag passed the Enabling Act, giving full powers to Hitler and celebrating the union of National Socialism with the old German establishment. That July, the government passed a law stating that the Nazi Party constitutes the only political party in Germany, and within months, all non-Nazi parties, trade unions, and other organizations had ceased to exist. His autocratic power now secure within Germany, Hitler turned his eyes toward the rest of Europe. In 1933, Germany was diplomatically isolated with a weak military and hostile neighbors, France and Poland. In a famous speech in May 1933, Hitler struck a surprisingly conciliatory tone, claiming Germany supported disarmament and peace. But behind this appeasement strategy, the domination and expansion of the Volk remained Hitler's overriding aim. By early the following year, he had withdrawn Germany from the League of Nations and began to militarize the nation in anticipation of his plans and territorial conquest. On June 29, 1934, the infamous Night of the Long Knives, Hitler had raw former Chancellor Kurt von Schleicher and hundreds of other problematic members of his own party murdered, in particular troublesome members of the SA. When the 86-year-old Hindenburg died on August 2, military leaders agreed to combine the presidency and chancellorship into one position, meaning Hitler would command all the armed forces of the Reich. On September 15, 1935, passage of the Nuremberg Laws deprived Jews of German citizenship and barred them from marrying or having relations with persons of German or related blood. Though the Nazis attempted to downplay its persecution of Jews in order to placate the international community during the 1936 Berlin Olympics, in which German Jewish athletes were not allowed to compete. Additional decrees over the next few years disenfranchised Jews and took away their political and civil rights. In March 1936, against the advice of his generals, Hitler ordered German troops to reoccupy the demilitarized left bank of the Rhine. Over the next 2 years, Germany concluded alliances with Italy and Japan, annexed Austria, and moved against Czechoslovakia. all essentially without resistance from Great Britain, France, or the rest of the international community. Once he confirmed the alliance with Italy in the so-called Pact of Steel, in May 1939, Hitler then signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. On September 1st, 1939, Nazi troops invaded Poland, finally prompting Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Beginning in 1933, the SS had operated a network of concentration camps to hold Jews and other targets of the Nazi regime. After war broke out, the Nazis shifted from expelling Jews from German-controlled territories to exterminate them. Mobile death squads executed entire Jewish communities during the Soviet invasion, while the existing concentration camp network expanded to include death camps. In addition to forced labor, the mass execution, certain Jews at Auschwitz were targeted as the subjects of horrific medical experiments carried out by a geneticist, Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death. Mengele's experiments focused on twins and exposed 3,000 child prisoners to disease, disfigurement, and torture under the guise of medical research. With the defeats of El Alamein and Stalingrad, as well as the landing of US troops in North Africa by the end of 1942. The tide of the war turned against Germany. As the conflict continued, Hitler became increasingly unwell, isolated and dependent on medications administered by his personal physician. Within a few months of the successful Allied invasion of Normandy in June 1944, the Allies had begun liberating cities across Europe. That December, Hitler attempted to direct another offensive through the Ardennes, trying to split British and American forces. But after July 1944, he holed up in a bunker beneath the Chancellery in Berlin, with Soviet forces closing it. Hitler made plans for a last-ditch resistance before finally abandoning that plan. At midnight on the night of April 28th to 29, Hitler married Eva. In the Berlin Bank, after dictating his political testament, Hitler shot himself in his suit on April 30. Eva took poison. Their bodies were burned according to Hitler's instructions. With Soviet troops occupying Berlin, Germany surrendered unconditionally on all fronts on May 7, 1945, bringing the war in Europe to a close. In the end, Hitler's planned 1,000 years Reich lasted just over 12 years, but wreaked unfathomable destruction and devastation during that time, forever transforming the history of Germany, Europe, and the world. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to have subscribed, liked, and also share after watching this video. You can comment and give your opinion about this video, what you liked, what you didn't like, and who is the next person you want in the next video. Thank you.